we're back, and we always leave the best to last now. No offense to my previous panel, because we kind of warn everybody out on this issue of Rodriguez. And I've got Mark McGibbon here, who is the CEO and president of viNGN. And we have the honor, I think it's another talk show host, which I've got to be on my P's and Q's. We got Anita Davis. Right. Now, Mark, let me just give you a little insight. It was really something I was concerned the last interview we had would never get on. And believe it or not, they've been playing it. And our good cameraman there produced it, and finally it got on. So I'm going to take you from where we were, so to speak. We will reinvent the wheel a little bit. But since the last interview, talk to me a little bit about your challenges. I watched you on television at Government House where you were getting a great reward from, I think it was the military, right?
It was a joint.
And pull up to the microphone. Don't be shy. Nobody listens to this broadcast anyway.
It was a Joint Chief of Staff volunteer service award that's usually given to military members.
Yes.
Or people who work within the government.
Uh-huh.
I was neither. So
right.
It was a real honor to receive that award, being a civilian.
Sure.
Right. So, and that was for efforts working at the National Defense University as a visiting professor.
Sure.
Who taught in all 10 programs that they offered there, and instructed in 19 courses. Whereas the normal professor teaches in 2 or 3 courses.
I'll be darned.
Yeah.
So how do they identify somebody like you? In other words, how is your name brought up for an award like that? Somebody had to be watching you, and I mean, it goes all the way up the command chain, right?
Yeah, so it was the president of the National Defense University and the chancellor of the school.
Must have been very impressed with you.
I was impressed with the school and the students, and it was an honor to work at such a school.
Sure. All right, what's keeping you up at night lately with reference to your function here in the Virgin Islands? And talk to me a little bit about the challenges. Since we talked last, I think you've probably accomplished a lot.
Yeah, the latest item that we addressed just this week was with Public Computing Center Manager Anita Davis, to my right. We visited 33 of the public computing centers.
Wow.
So those are on St. John, St. Thomas, and St. Croix. With those, I just wanted to have a good view of what's going on in those centers, to see if they're being utilized.
Sure.
And the takeaway, number one, they're being utilized. They're in locations where they're needed. They're in housing areas where low income. They're in senior citizens establishments. They're in the boys and girls clubs. Classes are being held for computer science, classes for programming, for kids to learn, for kids to do their homework, for people, Department of Labor, we go in there, people making their resumes. It was an incredible experience to have that, to see that. So the message that, the problem that we have at viNGN was messaging. Okay. And our message is we've learned from the past. Okay? So we had a message that I'll just give you one brand that needs to be changed.
Okay.
That brand is, I want my viNGN. Well, it's a good logo, but people cannot reach out to viNGN directly. They have to go through the internet service provider. And so that was a branding error on viNGN.
Yes, it is an error.
On our part, we admit that. We are taking the lessons learned, and we're changing that. So we would like the public to hear, the listening public today, or the viewing public, to know that they need to go through their internet service providers. And we're partnered with multiple internet service providers to help the economy. And, going back to the public computing centers, one of the things that we need to get clear with the public computing centers of viNGN installed the equipment.
Sure.
First,
through
grants. We install the equipment. The internet service providers provide the bandwidth.
Okay.
The hosting agencies are responsible for the upkeep and care and maintenance of that equipment. And so...
yeah, but if it's not maintained, they're going to blame you anyway.
Well,
you and I've gone over this before.
We do our best, and we just...
No, I understand that. I'm just trying to point out. But in any event, again, Anita, your thoughts on this? Join in with this conversation. Obviously, you were running around with these tours and arranging them. Your thoughts?
Well, it was great for Dr. McGibbon to actually get out to the PCCs because he has been following them with great interest literally since before he even came to work at viNGN.
Right.
When he got the position, he notified all of us of what he wanted to know. And one of the things he wanted to know was what it was we did and how we got it done and if we had any challenges so that we could address them. And we began to develop weekly reports. And he knows every trouble ticket, every PCC that's off, when it goes back on, staffing concerns. If there are complaints that come to him, he can generally tunnel through all of the information.
Well, give me an example. What would a typical complaint? And obviously, some senators are run better than others. Am I correct?
Actually, they're all run as well as can be expected.
Well, do you have different strengths in different ones, or?
Yeah,
that's what I'm talking about. And I'm not asking to pick on anybody.
Okay.
Holland is, I always say to people, don't let my politeness, confuse you with the facts in any event. But go right ahead, continue.
Well, okay, for staffing is a key thing. You'll find that you'll get more complaints from the general public where a public computer center doesn't have budget for staff.
Really? We have a problem like that here in the Virgin Islands, budgeting?
Okay.
This is something new.
You're pulling my leg, right?
I am trying to be as polite and sarcastic as I can.
Okay, well, unfortunately, we do have that challenge here. And where there is no staff, there is a diminished level of service. So if somebody goes to a public computer center and they need assistance creating a resume and there's no one to help them sign on to the computer, or if they're at a regulated computer center like our public libraries that are being monitored by a system called Cybrarian for record keeping and other purposes, and there's no one, for example, to administer the print administrator. When there's no one to administer that, you cannot do print jobs.
Sure.
So if the person can't find those services, and the PCCs generally tend to try to make sure that when people walk in, they are informed if there is no one to attend to them in the public computer center. But it will remain open to the public, and you can put your documents on a flash drive and walk them to either another printer or go to a service, one of the local commercial concerns, and run your print job there. So it's not impossible, but it does create an extra
challenge.
step.
Sure.
And when people meet that challenge, sometimes, especially if they were able to do it 2 weeks ago, they consider this as less service, and they have a right to say something. And when they do, we try our best to address their concerns if they come to us. But generally, the front lines are the ones who get the blast.
And particularly in many cases, the low-income folks, this is their only means to access this type of stuff. So it's like all of a sudden chopping off their ability to communicate. So the bottom line, the answer is to increase the budgets if we could.
If we could.
Do some of them have better? More budgets than others, like the libraries and stuff?
I think that most of the government agencies are struggling with budget. As you know, we're kind of pinching.
We were dealing with that. Yeah.
And some of the community organizations try to arrange to move staff around and cross-train. But when you have a staff member who has day-to-day deliverables, and then you expect them to take 2 hours out of their day perhaps to fill, because these resumes, these online resumes with the interview and everything can take up to 3 hours.
Sure.
And then at the end of the week, you're going to chastise the person because they didn't finish what they had to do. The person has to choose now between whether they're going to do the job they were hired to do as opposed to giving the assistance to a person who walks in who needs attention.
I understand. Mark, the relationship with the providers, again, you're spending an awful lot of time trying to work with them. Has that relationship improved? Are you still dealing with some of the issues with the providers?
Right now, the providers, we're trying to do collaboration. So I'm doing, as a CEO, I'm reaching out to all providers. Is that
like porcupines making love very carefully?
No, no, not at all.
All right, okay, just trying to find out.
Each provider has their strengths and weaknesses, as viNGN does.
Right.
In fact, we're meeting with VIRE tomorrow, meeting with the CEO and President, Alvaro Pilar.
Sure.
And, for collaboration purposes. And we welcome every ISP, whether if they've been in the territory for years or whether they're new and they want to come in and be welcomed into the market,
sure,
being an ISP. Before we move on, I'd like to just put a plug in for Anita Davis, who is a PCC manager, public computing manager, and one of the things that viNGN has made a conscious effort to do is to keep her on the payrolls.
Okay.
Was talking to the NTIA, the National Telecommunications
Information
Administration, who heads up the PCC program under Broadband USA, and noted that Ms. Davis here is one of the top in the nation. All of the other PCCs, of the 56 states and territories, only 3 have continued on. The Virgin Islands is the best of the best, and she was noted for that. And without her, we would not be where we are today with regards to the PCCs, the public computing centers.
All right, let's take a break at this point. With that description of your colleague, we should have had a drum roll. Anyway, let's take a break. We'll be back in a minute. You're on Caribbean Country 93.5. Keep your seatbelts on, and again, we're on with viNGN. We'll be back in a minute. All right, everybody out there in the real world, again, I'm glad you're with us again. You are in Caribbean Country 93.5, and if you're listening to us this morning, which is right now, a pleasant good morning, and for those that stumble in on us between 6 and 8, a pleasant good evening. And I'm here with viNGN, and I'm, again, here with Mark McGibbon, and, of course, Anita Davis, who is an interesting guest to interview as well. I've got to keep on my toes. Let's continue to talk a little bit about the grant, and then I'm going to flip the page, but I don't think we've exhausted this particular topic yet. You want to speak on it, Mark?
Sure. Of one of the grants that came to the Virgin Islands was a public computing center grant. The grant was established just for viNGN to install about 385 computers, printers, servers, monitors, mice, keyboards. It was an incredible feat, given that it was distributed to 33 different public computing centers throughout the U.S. Virgin Islands. Okay. Going back and clarifying my statement prior to our break, Anita is probably the best in class for handling the public computing centers. 65 of these public computing centers were distributed to throughout the United States and into territories. 3 continue on with what viNGN is doing. So the grant was written in such a fashion that...
Can I interrupt? Who are the other 2? Are there 2 states?
There are 2 others. I'm not aware of who they are.
You don't know who they are? Okay.
Yeah, offhand, I do not know.
Doesn't matter. Let's continue.
So with that, of those, the way the grant was written, you installed the equipment and you walked away. There was no tail end to that. The only accountability was to keep it on your inventory. Jeez. That's it. Boy. So when it broke, you just take it back. You don't replace it. There's no tail end to fix it. So viNGN has done, because of Anita Davis and her help in terms of troubleshooting. A lot of people call in. The managers, the PCC managers themselves will call in, and Anita will interface between the PCC managers and the ISPs.
All right, let me ask you quickly. If some of the equipment goes bad, you articulated it goes back. But I can remember when I was with Innovative, and of course the name has changed, we did a lot of the major donations in the start of this years ago into this kind of thing. So do you go back to the original individuals that did donate equipment and ask them to continue helping you out?
Well, The donation actually came from the federal government.
All right.
All of that was paid for from the federal government, and the grant has been exhausted and closed.
Maybe I'm a little confused because I know we gave a lot of equipment to the libraries and stuff like that when I was there, and that was BC before Christ. Okay, so things must have changed.
Right. So in that instance, I know the ISPs, and some of them that are tax exempt, they do donate throughout the community. And that's a whole different program.
Okay, gotcha.
So we shouldn't confuse
I don't
apples and
want
oranges.
to. That's why I didn't intend to confuse. We're not confusing now.
So viNGN has donated equipment to the best of our ability because we are a subsidiary of the Public Finance Authority, but we still need to make profit, make payroll, do all the pay our suppliers. So we work on very thin margins.
So how are you doing in that area as far as at least breaking even, or
we're just above breaking even because what we've done is reduced our prices by 50%, our wholesale prices, to pass those savings on to the consumer.
Sure.
Okay. So our motto is we're a wholesale provider of broadband internet.
Right.
That broadband internet is sold to the internet service providers, like just give a name.
It could be anyone. It doesn't matter. You're not
any internet service provider in the territory. From there, they sell that to the consumer, whether that's the residents, businesses, government. And with that, the prices should be.
Well, that's what I'm asking. Are they reflecting this if your, again, access is 50% less? We're talking about the backbone. Are your providers reflecting the generosity that you have towards them?
Some of them are. And that's what's great about the market. So if those providers are not passing those savings on, it's nothing for a consumer to pick up the phone and talk to their competitors to get a better deal.
Yeah, but you were hoping by doing this that they would. And if you have some that aren't, do you occasionally give them a little therapy or discussion with reference to, come on, guys, give a break?
Absolutely. And so with that, our hopes are the prices are reduced and we're sending more broadband speeds out to the public. A lot of people don't know what broadband means.
Well, explain it.
So let's explain that. A broadband, as far as the FCC's definition is, 25 megabits downloads, okay, and uploads is 3 megabits. So what's that mean? You go, 25 megabits. If you're not tech savvy, if you're trying to stream a video, probably the best way to stream a video is to at least have 10 megabits. If 2 people in the household are streaming video, you better have broadband at least 25 megabits.
Right, so that thing is going to spin around a little bit.
You're going to get this thing called buffering, right? And you got a little clock that tells you your video is not streaming.
Yes.
Right. So there's where we want to take the territory. If every household could at least have broadband at an affordable price, that would be a real win for the territory and the people in the territory.
Let me ask you, looking at this market, we're now, you're not the provider, obviously, you're the backbone. But what do you think? Each one of these providers have different costs and investments that they have. And when you're looking at these providers, and I have asked you this before, with a population of a little over 100,000, and we lost a lot of that as a result of Hovensa. How do you compete in a market like this? I mean, how many, again, clients do you need to have? We're talking about the provider.
Right. So that's an excellent question.
I always ask excellent questions.
I know you do. That's why we're here.
And you do excellent answers.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
So let's think. For the working population, you're expanding that 100,000 because we all go to work. We're using computers. I'm looking at a computer right now in your station. So we use these computers. So you may have multiple computers. For myself, I have 3 computers. So then you take a look at that market. Where are you located? Are you at work?
Sure.
Are you at your residence? Does your family? People have families. They have multiple computers in their homes.
Well, you're mobile. You could be anywhere with this.
So the market, and this is what the ISPs are very concerned with too. Now you're getting devices with IPTV, you're getting voice over IP, you're getting all this stuff that's going on the internet. So your broadband internet speeds need to go up.
Yes.
And so that's a rich market for an ISP.
Yeah, but that's an investment on their part, isn't it?
It's an investment, and there's different technologies.
Yes.
So let's say, you're with one ISP that broadcasts, and they broadcast only.
Yes.
So they have to be at the towers, and they broadcast. Others are going straight stick fiber, running under the ground, and what we call FTTH, fiber to the home.
Yes.
That's a huge investment. Okay, to get it out to these rural places in these islands where if you live on the end, suppose you live by Point Udall on St. Croix.
Yes.
To run a fiber optic cable to your home out there is exorbitantly expensive.
It's not,
right.
It's prohibitive.
Right.
Almost.
So eventually we'll get there. So the goal is to get to these richly populated areas, get them to the internet that they need so the ISPs can make money, and then turn around to these rural areas and eventually build out to those. It just makes sense.
Well, that's what we used to do in the phone business, and we also used to do it when we were doing the, iPhones and sites that we would have to make sure the signal was strong. You have had the experience in the area of being a provider at one point, didn't you? Not here, but you know what the business is.
I do.
All right, so I'm asking you to take your hat off. You're no longer viNGN. With the unique knowledge you have now, probably better than most, what would you do if you decided to be a provider? And everybody out there, don't get threatened. He's not thinking of being a provider.
Right.
But I'm talking about looking at it and knowing and having the knowledge you have. What would you advise them?
I would partner with viNGN. There's a $115 million infrastructure that's right there,
yes,
willing to be built out upon. Okay, there's these towers all over the.
So why not? Is it because they've made investment? Because I know in our case, when I again was with Innovative, and we had, like, for instance, contracts with the hospital or different government entities, we were very upset when they turned around and joined more of the government gang, you know what I mean?
Right. So the old cliche applies here.
Yes.
It takes money to make money.
Right.
Okay? So there's $100 million hanging out there to build the last mile. Mm-hmm. That's cost prohibitive to very small businesses.
Sure.
So suppose and this might sound like a lot to folks that are out there. Maybe you have a $2 million business. That's nothing, really. And to make payroll, to do all the service calls, to keep your servers up and running, customers happy. It's a lot of money.
Sure.
Maybe they're spending about $1.5 million in payroll.
Sure.
And so they got $500,000 to hopefully nothing goes wrong, and it's expensive to run a business.
Well,
so that's why I feel for the ISPs.
Yeah, because what I'm seeing is that obviously we used to be worried about it in the phone business, and obviously in competition that was a regulated area. But whether it was television by satellite or cable, we would go for the areas, obviously, where we had a lot of population.
Right.
And you really have a philosophy as a backbone. Come on, we got to give everybody this available, but then you have to have your providers be able to be thinking that way as well.
So it's symbiotic relationship.
Yes.
Okay, so what we've done for the providers, we invested the federal government and the USVI has invested in about $115 million to get this middle mile out to the community.
Right.
So.
All right, let's flip the page a little bit here. You talked a little bit earlier about the providers, as well as we're talking about you at viNG and as your strengths and your weaknesses. What do you consider your weakness? You made that statement.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if it was a perfect.
No, this is a very good question. As you say, you ask good questions.
You answer well.
It's the public knowledge of what viNGN is perception, what we do, and the perception is wrong. Most of the public that I meet in my experiences throughout the Virgin Islands, they think that I experienced it all this week when I was visiting the public computing centers. Folks think that viNGN is an internet service provider.
Yes.
We're a middle mile wholesale provider, and we provide bandwidth to the ISPs.
So what are you doing to prevent that misconception? Okay. Otherwise, we're on here talking about it, and it'll be rebroadcast. But obviously, you were talking again about your message, what your slogan is, your logo. Right. Is it going to be more by visual understanding, again, your relationship?
It's a PR campaign that we're doing.
It is.
So I've, within the business, I've designated a full-time public relations officer to do that, manager. We're advertising in the newspaper. We're coming out on radio shows like this.
Yes.
Hopefully we'll be on the air and on TV or cable.
Yes.
And so we need to get that message out by any means possible. I'm doing magazine interviews. So to ensure that the listening and the reading and the viewing public, they're bombarded with what viNGN really does for the community.
All right, they're viewing you now, and they are, again, listening to you on the radio, and we're streaming. You're now talking to those folks out there.
Absolutely.
And what I want, in a short way, how can you hammer that? You and I talk many times technically, but how would you like to compact this for the listener and the person who's watching it on TV?
Virgin.
Hit them with a hammer. Go right ahead.
The Virgin Islands, okay? If you want to have the Virgin Islands Next Generation Network, which is a 100% fiber optic cable system, and you want that to your homes,
yes,
okay, you need to contact your internet service providers.
Thank you.
And ask them the question. Now, question number one. Are you hooked up to viNGN? Because there are some internet service providers that are not.
They're not,
okay?
correct.
And so most are. And then shop around for the most competitive price. Get your most bang for your buck. And then ask your neighbors whether they like that internet service provider and if they're reliable, dependable, if your internet goes down on you. To me, if my internet goes down, I get skittish.
Right.
It is a critical infrastructure that we need to protect, and we need to have at all times, because it is, most people do business using the internet.
Sure. Right. All right, out there, it's the provider, everybody, and I hope that, again, Mark is expressing that in such a way that you understand it. But there are also people in the industry that would like to see this confusion continue anyway, isn't there?
I hope not.
Well, Holland can smell it.
Okay.
All right. And it is there. And again, I always say it ends up here in the Virgin Islands, the blame game. And again, there are people out there that are your detractors. Well, why did we spend all this money, blah, blah. We didn't. The federal government spent it. Right. And we were in a unique position like no other to be able to take advantage of this. And I went through it when I was in the legislature, just dealing with some zoning changes and dealing with some of the issues of bringing the fiber up and all this stuff. You couldn't imagine. We were so archaic in thinking then. When I was in the legislature, we were finally computerized. Most of the senators parked the computers in a closet. They didn't know how to use them. And I went out and I hired, some youngsters, and I said, I don't care whether they're communists, socialists, Democrats, Republicans, and we were completely computerized. And our post-audit and other divisions within the legislature had to come through me because they didn't have staff that were trained. And you understand what knowledge is. Right. I knew where every bill was. I knew everything, so I was operating that. Anita, any other discussion on this particular topic?
Well, I'm glad that Dr. McGibbon got to speak about that so
and he was so
thoroughly.
Eloquent.
It's important for people to know. The initial slogan for viNGN was connecting the VI to the world. And so we are an internet backbone.
So what is a new slogan? Have you come up with it yet?
We have not.
Okay.
So the public relations has been about 2 weeks.
But you're thinking about it.
Yes. So we're talking about our branding and we're moving forward.
Somehow late at night, all of a sudden, bam, it'll come to you, or somebody will come up with it. Is there somebody else, or is it other people that might? Why don't you have a contest within your organization? Come up with it. You know what I mean?
Right. So just think of what Virgin Islands, the Next Generation Network, has done even before it came here. You stirred a thought with me. All of the schools, 100% of the schools throughout the Virgin Islands,
Yes.
they get 100 megabits, 4 times the broadband speed to their schools to help those schools out.
Sure.
Prior to that time, I don't know what they had. So it's incredible. Businesses are thriving now. They have these broadband speeds brought to them. The economy should be doing better. We have 14 ISPs that are hooked up to viNGN at any given time. The University of the Virgin Islands, just with
well, the tech park was another thing. You go directly to the tech park, don't you?
That's right.
You even ran the fiber all the way there.
That's right. And we work with the University of the Virgin Islands, who's an ISP. They go back and they interface with FIU back in the States.
How do you think the government's doing with utilizing, again, this technology? And we're talking about computers being able to talk to each other. Sometimes I interview some of the commissioners and some of the directors where they are shaking out some of the problems they have as well. Do you think we're underutilizing it?
I think the government, that's a good question for Director Tony Riddick, the Bureau of Information Technology.
I understand that.
Who is an ISP.
Mm-hmm.
As we spoke the last time, I think that was a wise decision to have for one major reason only. Even this week, we had ransomware.
You had what?
Ransomware. Okay.
Okay. Somebody what?
Security.
Security. Okay.
Like they kidnap your files.
I know.
They lock down your files, and you have to pay.
And then they
ransom,
shake it down.
And you have to pay a certain amount of fee, and a lot of times via Bitcoin. And who has Bitcoin? So you find out where Bitcoin is. You pay your ransom, and a lot of times your files are never recovered. It's just a scheme.
God.
So of the latest ransomware hit of yesterday?
Yeah.
Only $9,000 was spent to get files back, and no one has touched it.
Jeez.
So the cyber experts are looking at that to see. Let's do a ping back. Let's find out who's taking this money in the dark web, and
how do you access them? In other words, when you find out they may be in a foreign country.
Oh, absolutely.
So what consequences? There's no consequences. I think the United States, with all of this is going on, and obviously there's a big debate nationally with reference to the election, there must be some sort of pill that destroys this, that can destroy the systems of the countries that are trying to do this to us. A poison pill?
I know the United States.
I know you do. I know your background.
Right. So there are tools.
You could be a hacker, really.
They're a certified ethical hacker.
No, that's what I'm saying. No, I'm merely saying you know how to find these folks, and you did that in the military, didn't you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
It's a nasty game, boy. Anyway, let's take another break. We'll be back in a minute. You're on Caribbean Country 93.5, and Mark is not a hacker. We'll be back.
More Straight Talk with Holland Redfield.
All right, we are back again, and we're on with viNGN. They're not the provider. Mark is not a hacker. Got that. Now, Mark and Anita Davis, if I rudely interrupted you at any point, let me know. Only because this is your time to summation. We're basically flipping a page, or anything that I didn't ask you that you wanted to answer. This is your time.
No, I think you did a great job. I just want to complete one thought with regards to the Bureau of Information Technology. Mm-hmm. Originally, many of the accounts were with a local ISP. Okay, those accounts were handed over to the government, and for a really good reason. Security purposes.
Sure.
So we were talking about various viruses and hacks and into computer systems. And how can we say that an internet service provider can provide that trust internally? They have background investigations? They're running a 24/7 network operations center to prevent some of these unethical people that are trying to hack into government systems.
Sure.
So who better to oversee the CIA, the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, the U.S. Army, and all their secrets, government on government. So let me just back up and talk about my time as a United States naval officer.
Sure.
We would never outsource to an internet service provider because that was to be maintained internally with the government. We have no one to blame ourselves, and all the people are vetted, trained and vetted They have top secret code word background investigations, which take up to a year to get.
Wow.
And so people don't realize that. So, and to fix that, to fix those errors, to take them offline. So you want an internet service provider to take you offline and take everybody else offline at the same time?
Sure.
No. I mean, they're not trained to do that. Do they have a network operations center? Your prices for your internet service would be through the roof, would be astronomical.
Well, their level of sophistication, do you think, and we're talking about the providers with this particular issue we're talking about, do you think that level of sophistication is there, or is this, again, jabbing into your system becoming more technical and people are conniving to do these kind of things?
I think that's a whole separate business.
Is it? Okay.
So you'll see in the United States that businesses thrive on just helping small businesses get back online. And it's not an internet service provider's job, really, to do that. They provide the internet to you.
I got you. All right. Anita, any closing thought real quick? You got about 30 seconds.
Well, I want to build a community of coaches, and the best way to do that is to hit everyone and each one teach one. Call me at 715-8581, extension 2244, and ask me how.
Great. And to each and every one of you out there, again, remember, keep your chin up. Things are going to get better. As I keep telling you that as you go through life, if you're waiting for government to solve all your problems, excuse me, it's all about choices that you make. We are, again, fiscally challenged. We have ourselves some real challenges. And remember, the main thing is to develop a consensus. Give some of the folks that are working for government a little break, okay? And you yourselves, keep a good attitude. You know, when you come on here and tell you to try to be polite, we try to be polite. Always tell everybody, don't interpret my politeness as weakness. God bless each and every one of you. God bless the United States Virgin Islands. And, of course, God bless the United States of America. This will be on tonight. We're streaming, and it will be on radio between 6 and 8. And subject to our photographer there, which we'll see what happens, him and Earl Morris. We may be able to hit it tonight on the Community Access Channel. We'll see you mañana.